This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Nigerian military says it's probing claims of Boko Haram's leader's death. Strong earthquakes hit the Chinese provinces of Qinghai and Yuan, leaving 3 dead and dozens injured. And on World Biodiversity Day, we look at efforts by some African countries to preserve biodiversity. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. China's father of hybrid rice dies, age 91. We look at his contribution to food security in Africa. And in sports, doubts over rescheduled British and Irish Lions tour to South Africa. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. So good to have you with us. We begin in Nigeria, where Army Chief Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru has been buried along with several other top military officials in the country. The officers died in an Air Force plane crash on Friday. According to reports from the presidency, the military officers were on an official visit to the northern state of Kaduna. The plane crashed near Kaduna Airport. The cause of the crash is yet to be determined. The incident comes just 3 months after a Nigerian Air Force passenger plane also crashed outside Abuja's airport following alleged engine failure. All 7 people on board were killed. Meanwhile, Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau has been reported dead. The Wall Street Journal, citing Nigerian intelligence on Friday, reported that Shekau died after he detonated a suicide vest during an ambush by his rival Islamic State terror group. According to the report, hundreds of Islamic State fighters attacked Shekau's base in Timbuktu's Triangle region of Nigeria's Sambisa Forest on Wednesday. In 2015, Shekau pledged allegiance to Islamic State. Boko Haram then rebranded itself as Islamic State West Africa Province, or ISWAP. But internal disputes involving Islamic State naming another leader to lead ISWAP pushed Shekau to reassume leadership of Boko Haram. The militant group has conducted numerous deadly attacks and abductions in northeast Nigeria since it initiated an Islamic insurgency in 2009. Boko Haram leader Abubakar Shekau has been proclaimed dead several times over in the last decade. In August 2016, the Nigerian Air Force announced that Shekau had been fatally wounded in airstrikes, but a month later, a video was released showing Shekau alive and in good health. In August 2015, Chadian President Idris Deby announced Boko Haram had been decapitated and Shekau replaced by a new leader. In the same month, Shekau announced in an audio message released on social media that he was alive and still the leader of Boko Haram. In September 2014, the Nigerian army said Shekau had been killed by the Cameroonian military in Maiduguri. A month later, Shekau emerged on video mocking allegations of his death. And in mid-2013, a report claimed Shekau had died following a military raid on the jihadist group's shelter. A few weeks later, the Nigerian military dismissed as an imposter a man in a video claiming to be Shekau. And in 2009, after taking on the leadership of Boko Haram, Shekau was reported dead following clashes with the Nigerian military. But a year later, Shekau appeared in video saying that though he had been shot in the thigh, he was alive and claimed leadership of Boko Haram. Security consultant and former military officer Roy Okiedebie tells us more about the latest claims of Shekau's death and its implications on Nigeria's counter-terrorism efforts.
Well, for now, I think I have 80% confidence that this information is correct because of the agencies that have communicated the news. And I have a very reliable source on Yuan's intelligence. And Yuan's intelligence have communicated the same breaking news when it occurred. So I believe that this is true, and this time around, it was an actual elimination. Over the years, you can see that ISIS and ISWAP, they have been trying to put a kind of divisive conditions on the loyalty of Boko Haram personnel. And so many commanders in Boko Haram have broken out, and we have seen consistently where Shekau has come out to eliminate his commanders in outright cold-blooded murder. And this has instilled a lot of divisive nature in the Boko Haram. And I tell you that ISIS and ISWAP would be able to communicate a lot of financial body weight on their operations. And Nigeria is in for a very long thing, because we have the relationship with our grand fighters, our broke out from Boko Haram, coming to join ISWAP, who knows the terrain and all that. And it's funny to know that they could able to come into Nigerian space, they could able to control a lot of resources, personnel, and they could able to reach Shekau and create the tendencies for him to commit that suicide action along with his generals. And we didn't have any notification or any follow-up. So Nigerian security agencies need a lot to do. They need to put their hands on deck, and they need to push a trajectory that will cause us to be in charge of our spaces.
Search and rescue efforts continue almost 20 hours after a series of strong earthquakes rattled the southwestern province of Yuan and Qinghai in the northwest. In Yuan, at least 3 people have been killed and dozens injured near the popular tourist destination of Dali. Nearly 400 aftershocks have been recorded so far. Now, in Qinghai, a magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck a sparsely populated area early Saturday. 8 people were injured. It's the strongest tremor in China in over a decade. The tremor damaged several bridges, roads, and highways, including one connecting Qinghai with Yunnan province further south. The ceasefire between Israel and Palestinians brokered by Egypt is expected to halt the fighting that led to the destruction of infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. Many Palestinians are still in dire need of humanitarian assistance. The Egyptian government is now offering much needed supplies to the affected Palestinians. Meanwhile, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has announced that Egypt will help in Gaza's reconstruction efforts through projects worth $500 million. Here's CGTN's Adel El-Mahroui with more details.
The suffering of the people in Gaza during the heavy Israeli bombardment has led to lots of public sympathy for them across Egypt. That has fueled the strongest public awakening in the support of the Palestinian cause seen in years. A stream of in-kind donations crossed the border to assist the people besieged in the Gaza Strip.
It is not allowed in Egypt to organize protests, even if it's in support of a foreign cause. The unions know that any request to organize protests will be rejected. Any violation of that will see the Egyptian administration arrest those involved. So the least Egyptians could do at this stage is to volunteer and show support to Palestine through donations. It is the only way they can show solidarity.
The Egyptian authorities have opened the Rafah Passage, Gaza's only gateway to the world. It's allowing trucks carrying tons of supplies into the strip. The Egyptian Red Crescent was the first to offer post-war trauma support.
One of the most important services we provide is primary psychological support. Some people were harmed, others lost their loved ones, others are in critical condition. The Egyptian Red Crescent is very strong in primary psychological support. We are also currently in contact with the Palestinian side to determine the needs of the camps or shelters for those displaced by the bombings.
A ceasefire is in place, but that doesn't mean the assistance from Egypt will stop. With the cessation of hostilities, talks about reconstruction have begun. Despite Egypt's challenged economy, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has vowed to build infrastructure and construction projects in Gaza worth $500 million. The magnitude of destruction Gaza witnessed in just 1 week by far exceeds any previous wars between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that has created a driving force for Egyptians to show their Palestinian brothers that they can support them by any means to at least live the suffrage they feel. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The news continues on Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Here's what's ahead. China's father of hybrid rice dies, age 91. We look at his contribution to food security in Africa. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Wildlife experts say global biodiversity is deteriorating. Africa is classified as being rich in animal and plant resources, but biodiversity conservation is facing severe challenges. Namibian conservationists Malise and Rudy van Veroen hope to arouse humanity's awareness of biodiversity through participation, education, and scientific research. Our reporter spoke to the couple who founded the Nankuse Wildlife Sanctuary, and this is what they had to say about the challenges of conservation during the COVID-19 pandemic.
2020, a year mankind will never forget. When we said at the end of 2019, we thrived in the face of adversity, we never thought that 2020 would be the next level of adversity.
But it was the year that taught us to live, to appreciate life. And with your help and this incredible team, we have lived.
This year's International Day of Biodiversity was marked amidst growing concerns over rapid urbanization and its impact on biodiversity. In Kenya, for instance, many coffee farmers have opted to invest in real estate or sell their land to developers and earn higher profits as demand for housing rises. CGTN's Nick Mudimba reports on the impact of rapid urbanization on biodiversity.
As the population grows, the rural-urban migration intensifies, so does demand for shelter. Take a look at this land. It used to be full of coffee plantations producing some of the finest coffee in the world. But the increasing demand for housing and low global coffee prices have pushed many farmers here to either sell their land or invest in the real estate business. Just next to it is the Fairview Coffee Estate, located 23 kilometers from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. It's one of the oldest coffee farms in Africa. Here, the land looks prime, but the effects of increasing human activity can be seen from a distance.
Most people get into farming. It's a business, and so if you're not profitable, then you look for different avenues that may be. And so I'm sure as on your drive to Kiambu, you saw the amount of real estate that's coming up. Previously, many years ago, all the way from Muthaiga Golf Club right until this estate, it was all coffee, all under coffee. But that has changed significantly over the last 10, 20 years.
Today, more than 2 billion hectares of previously productive land is degraded. Over 70% of natural ecosystems have been transformed. By 2050, these could hit 90%. In 2030, food production will require an additional 300 million hectares of land. By 2030 again, the clothing and textile industry is predicted to use 35% of more land. That's over 115 million hectares. Now behind me and what you can see besides me are known as coffee beds. They used to dry the coffee after harvesting from the farms. But there's something very strange here. Most of these beds are actually empty. Reason, environmental degradation has made so many farmers actually be afraid to invest in coffee. This is where now they have to opt for other options like real estate, which has made them very stable right now. Stakeholders insist that innovation will help prevent the degradation of land experienced in many parts of the world.
Where you're innovating and trying to get more value for your produce through different ways, whether it's value addition through the certification or through a tourism component. But I think there really are different ways to innovate, and I hope that Kenyans think about this not only through coffee, but other sectors, tea, mining. Why should we, give away most of the value of our produce to others? It's said that Africa produces 40% of the world's resources, but is only engaged in maybe about 3% of world trade. Now, the difference between those numbers is value added not here, but elsewhere.
Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Still in Kenya, biodiversity levels are dropping by the year as habitat loss, climate change, and human activity drive species to extinction. And as CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports, restoring mangroves in the coastal town of Lamu has never been more important.
Mangrove forests are important ecosystems that grow along Kenya's coastlines. In the country's coastal town of Lamu, they serve as habitats for fish, crabs, and other marine species. Farmer Shukri, a resident of the island, has been spearheading the planting of mangroves at the coast.
The more we plant mangroves, the more the fishing grounds will be many. At the same time, the erosion will stop, and also the number of crabs and also the juveniles, baby turtles, they're just living next to mangroves.
Here in Lamu, mangroves are also used to protect vulnerable coastal communities from the devastating impacts of climate change.
This mangrove forest is naturally protecting families and reducing the risk of tsunamis and other hazards in the coastal areas of Kenya.
But despite their wide-ranging benefits, mangroves are still being destroyed and degraded at an alarming rate. However, residents like Abdulhai Sultan understand the importance of the ecosystem.
Mangrove is very important for the whole Lamu. Like all the houses with the Makuti's roof, you must use the mangroves. That's very important for us. Mangrove is where the crab, they grow up, where the prawns, they grow up, where the jumbo, they grow up from the mangroves.
People are really polluting the environment in terms of the environmental degradation. People are cutting down mangroves and they don't replant them. People are pouring the plastic into the sea waters. And also people are doing unnecessary things with the environment. And this leads to many impacts, negative impacts.
For many residents here in Lamu, mangroves remain an important ecosystem that protects the environment. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Lamu, Kenya.
Chinese agronomist Yuan Longping has died at the age of 91. Locally, he's known as the father of hybrid rice, which has been credited for helping save countless lives from starvation during the 1970s. Earlier today, his hearse was taken to the research center where he worked, where many people waited to pay their respects. His work has also been recognized in helping reduce global hunger. In China, hybrid rice feeds nearly 1/5 of the population with less than 9% of the world's arable land. The United Nations has also paid tribute to Yuan, praising his contributions to food security, poverty alleviation, and people's livelihoods. Hybrid rice is grown in Asia, America, and Africa, and in different kinds of environments. One of the most successful examples is in the African island nation of Madagascar, where Yuan's discovery has left its mark in farmers' lives. CGTN's Yuan filed this report in 2019.
Across Madagascar, the humid tropical climate, rich natural resources, and long history of rice cultivation has made this island country an ideal place for rice plantations. Yet, due to the lack of financial support and agricultural infrastructure, the low yield of the local rice still poses threat of hunger for local people. Over a decade ago, a team of Chinese agricultural experts came to Madagascar with the simple goal of helping local farmers planting productive hybrid rice. But this idea was not very well received.
In the beginning, local farmers couldn't believe or understand that our hybrid rice can be as productive as we said. Some even called our hybrid rice monster rice.
Tough as it was, Zhang Lijun and his team members visited nearly all the rice paddies nationwide to cultivate high-yield seeds. And in the following years, the stable and high production of hybrid rice proved to be the best testament This progress cannot be made without the efforts of the Chinese experts and the guidance of China's father of hybrid rice, Yuan Longping.
The production of local rice is about 2.5 tons per hectare, and the average production on the 20,000 hectares that we planted is 7 tons. So the production not only doubled, but even tripled.
Add to that, the highest harvest of the rice has reached 10.8 tons per hectare earlier this year, and some local farmers who planted hybrid rice not only had enough to eat, they even had enough to improve their livelihood.
One of the farmers that we work with made some income by selling extra rice and building new homes and accommodating them with appliances.
The increasing yields of hybrid rice has not only made its popularity among local farmers, but even wider range. And now the image of the hybrid rice has made its appearance on the note of local currency.
Hybrid rice is not only helping people in Madagascar to reach their self-sufficiency in rice, but other African countries as well. And the efforts will continue, as this is the long-cherished hope of China's father of hybrid rice.
For the welfare of the people is one of my lifelong wishes.
Yuan's legacy goes beyond China and to many other parts of the world. Earlier, we spoke to the country manager for the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, John Masharia, about what hybrid rice means to Africa.
First of all, rice production in this country, in Kenya, is a priority. And the country produces about 150,000 metric tons of rice, vis-a-vis a demand of about 500,000 metric tons. And part of the reason why we have this deficit in production is because of low adoption of yield-improving technologies. And in this particular case, you find that most of the smallholder farmers that the country has, they're basically using seed varieties that their progeny probably lapsed a couple of years ago. And in this particular case, what is then needed to improve production is for smallholder farmers to improve hybrid varieties that are able to be more water efficient, more nutrient efficient, and then be able to actually help smallholder farmers improve their yields and also improve their incomes. Some of the high-yielding varieties that we have include the America variety that has been widely promoted under the East African Productivity Program. Hybrid rice is a priority for most African countries, and this is the reason why there has been for example, in East Africa, there has been the East Africa Productivity Program that has sought to encourage smallholder farmers to adopt high-yielding varieties, which are more water efficient, which are more resource efficient, but are also able to give smallholder farmers 3 times the yield that they could actually get from other varieties. And in that regard, whether you're in West Africa or Southern Africa, then the need to actually adopt higher yielding varieties becomes all the more important, especially for a country like Kenya, which has a production deficit of about 350,000 metric tons. The country is heavily reliant on rice imports from countries such as Tanzania and Pakistan. But if smallholder farmers could take up more higher yielding varieties, you understand that we could actually reduce the rice deficit that we have, but also reduce and improve on the balance of trade as regards to rice imports in the country.
Stay tuned to Africa Live. We've got your sports segment coming up after the break. Here's a peek at the headline. Doubts over